Good morning. I will present in Spanish, even if I lived here and I understand Catalan, but that was long ago. I want to talk about a topic that which has to do with today's topic. We are a Swedish company headquartered in Sweden, but we have offices in Boston, the US, in Lisbon, where I live, and in Greece, where we develop most of the code lying under our apps. There are many apps that we are developing with partners in Singapore, where we have the knowledge about safety. Rather than presenting our technology, I'm here to present about the situation in terms of digital identity. This is a huge challenge because what I call the public marketplace, the public services that will be increasingly offered online, and the private marketplace, you will know about it, Amazon, Google, and well, basically e-commerce, all the sale, the purchases that we do online, these will get massive. So a huge issue is how to be protected and guarantee my transactions. If we check the current world, today we've got 3.7 billion people in the world with a hard copy ID. Very often it is misused or not used at all, despite the efforts European governments have made to include a chip on the ID to turn it slightly more digital. But this has been tested in Estonia, and the necessary structure to make this chip or e-ID work is too complicated, because this has to be managed by public authorities that are still living in the past. So this happens in the public administration, that it still works with printing press concepts, and this hasn't really changed because the organizations that issue banknotes in Spain, US, European are the same ones that are trying to make digital or e-identity work, and they will not be up to the challenge because they are not familiar with the new concepts. And it's interesting to see that many people in this planet don't even have a paper-based or hard copy ID. So it's not very democratic. Children, for example, do not have access to an ID, and they cannot manage their identity safely. And women, there are countries today in which women cannot have an ID. It's the husband who has the identity of the wife when it comes to filing public processes. We believe that digital identity will probably increase the access of people to their public and private rights. And it's very simple, because this is a tool that emerged 20 years ago in the form of a smartphone with limited function 20 years ago, but not so limited 10 years ago, which is the smartphone. People say, well, yeah, but not everyone is into smartphones. Well, there are very cheap Android-based smartphones that can be bought by anyone in the planet, and this has become a need to send money, to work, and this is regardless of the social and economic standings. Is it safe? Well, it is safe if there is a technology behind it to safely manage our identity. So we should not rely on a third party. Basically, it's about keeping our identity under control. So this is the tool that we all have in our pocket, and we never leave it at home. We might forget or leave our ID, our money, but the phone, the smartphone, well, this is a habit in the modern society. It's always on you, and you always have a spare battery for it. There are many mechanisms, many Catalan companies and in other countries that work on the digital and IT safety of smartphones because there are bugs and there are challenges. So that's not a debate anymore. I think it's much cheaper than an ID, an actual ID, because the issuer of the document with data validated by a public authority is the user himself. I don't have to go to any office and be asked for 30 different documents and spend 3 hours waiting, which is not very convenient during a pandemic. The digital ID will cost maybe 10 times less than issuing a hard copy ID. There's no polycarbonate, no printing of data, not 20 people who have to pack the ID, send it, etc. This is very costly for public administrations. So what's the idea behind it? We need to democratize digital identity because it will be required everywhere. And it's the only way for me to certify who I am when I use a digital service, and making sure that no one is using my own data. Everyone's talking about GDPR, but I'm still at a loss when it comes to accepting or accepting the cookies of web pages. I think that the mechanism could be simplified. Are you over 18, under 18? Would you like to accept or not? So the digital identity has to be accepted everywhere. And so if I travel, my digital identity has to be valid, not only in my country, but everywhere. And this has to be based on standards. So you can really use your digital ID everywhere in the world, removing language and administration barriers without having to give up on your rights and having to share all your data. This is a key element. Basically, we have to minimize data since I'm sharing my identity, but only the tiny part that I need to show to use that private or public marketplace service. I don't have to share with you if I'm a man or a woman, where I live, if I am HIV positive. And this is only to, for example, enter a pub at night to prove that you are 18. To date, people still photocopy their physical ID, and this is ethically banned. Will this simplify our lives? Yes, it's much easier. I will not need my driving license, let alone all the passwords that we need to use to access sites, except for young people. Memory gets worse with time.
It has to be available around the clock, and that's important as well. With a network, with a signal, or without it, either online or offline, I can share my identity, and obviously it could happen that I am at a given place where there's no signal, or because my phone service has been interrupted, and I still need to identify myself, even if it's to pay my phone bill, right? And obviously data need to be faithful and confirmed without being CC'd. That's crucial. It's our main job. And as I was saying, the only way to create, and there's this lack of cohesion here, especially in Europe, where there will be new funds, and hopefully people think about this, which is standardization. We cannot say Estonia did this, I'm going to do this my own way. No, there has to be a standard procedure. Everyone needs to agree on the standard, how to share and exchange data, and how to identify people all over the world. Otherwise, there will be no end to this attempt to identify everyone from a transactional point of view. There's an ISO standard about to be published, even though it's for driving licenses, but it can be applied to the digital ID future because it defines how to exchange data, which way, and how the apps need to be protected. And obviously it includes some best practices for encrypting. However, encrypting is just one part. There will be a lot of apps and software that will help us protect the hardware as well, the phone itself. I'm not going to show you our demo, but you can go to our website. There are a lot of videos there. But if I want to, let's say, come into a disco, why do I need to give my name and surname to the bouncer? I will just tell them how old I am, and I will send through Bluetooth or a QR or any means available in my phone that information. Now, if I need to cross a border and I have to show that I have been vaccinated against COVID or that I have antibodies, I'm going to send them only that piece of information. The doctor at the airport are not controlling borders. They just want to see that I'm green. And that's what standardization and information exchange is all about. With this challenge that every transaction we carry out needs to be identified. And we need to be the only ones able to use that ID instead of sending it through many different channels, because at the end of the day, it will be used by some kind of database and not properly shared, encrypted, encapsulated from my own identity that I control myself. Thank you.